One of the most common questions I'm asked by people who are looking to go to study at a leading institute abroad is it really worth the cost? Given the high costs of studying abroad, it's a very good question to ask. And one of the ways that you can assess that is by calculating your return on investment. It's an important step that a lot of people actually skip out on. I think largely because people aren't really sure how to go about approaching it. So right now I'd like to talk about a potential way of approaching this. So what do you need to do? Well, the first step is actually to calculate your investment. That's a fairly simple step actually. However, even in this case, you probably want to calculate at least two scenarios. The elements that would go into calculating your investment would be things like tuition, living costs, travel costs. Travel costs are important because you may actually be flying around the country looking for internships and full-time jobs, and so that can add up to a fair amount. Those kinds of answers can be found on most universities' websites, so it's fairly easy to calculate. So what are the two scenarios in this case? Well, the two scenarios could be what would happen in a boom year versus a recession year. In a boom year, you're more likely to get a job immediately, while in a recession year, you may have to wait for 3 to 6 months after graduation to actually start your full-time job, and you need to cover your living costs during that time frame. So it helps to actually calculate both scenarios because your investment may increase by as much as 5% in scenario number 2. The second step is actually to calculate your return, which is of course much harder to do and requires fairly thorough research. It's a great thing to do not just because you'll know whether studying abroad is actually worth the cost for you, but also it will help you get a much better sense of the types of opportunities that are available to you once you graduate. So what do you do in this case? Well, number one, you start off by looking at starting salaries once you graduate. It's important to look at starting salaries in the industry that you're really interested in. So for example, when a school publishes their average salaries, they're looking at it across industries. However, if you're going into a marketing job versus a finance job, your starting salaries may be fairly different. Secondly, again, you want to look at boom versus recession years. In a recession year, you may not get the same type of starting salary, maybe slightly lower. You may not get a sign-on bonus, or the sign-on bonus is slightly lower. And even your overall bonus may be something that you might not either make in that year, or it may be, the offer in itself may be slightly lower. So you want to make sure you're calculating two scenarios here again. Then what would you do? Well, then you'd want to dig deeper and look at, well, what are happening to alumni in these industry 5, 10, or 15 years onwards? Sometimes it's hard to project 15 years out, but at least 5 years is fairly possible, and you can get these statistics from the universities themselves. And why is that important? Well, it's not just your first year out of university, but you're looking at the payoff in your overall career over a period of time, which is the whole point of going to a leading institute. You'd also want to look into other nuances, like are there differences in starting salaries in your industry in between local or students of that nationality in the country that you're studying in and international students. Sometimes it may be the case, and you'd want to make sure you understand that. You'd also want to see within the industry what type of career paths are available to you, and therefore how much do you actually expect your salary to increase 5 to 10 years out. So all of these sort of nuances become very important, and it's critical to take that into account. So I would suggest in terms of investment, you'd want to calculate at least a couple of scenarios, sometimes more than 2 scenarios. However, one of the things that I do say is important is it's not just all about the money. At the end of the day, what type of experience are you having when you're going and studying abroad? There's a certain exposure that you get when you go and study abroad, which you may not get in your own home country. There are other fantastic experiences that you will have that you wouldn't get if you were studying in your own home country. For example, when I went to Columbia Business School, I was in a class with people from all types of different nationalities. 6 years on, we're still close friends today, and we look forward to meeting each other around different places across the world whenever we can do so. That kind of experience is just not quantifiable, and you'd want to take that into account as well.